Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick and we're here at the Broadband World Forum 2016 in London's Docklands, where I'm talking with Gary Heffernan, who is Senior Managing Director at Accenture. Gary, good to meet you. We've been having a good conversation off camera before we started turning over and being recorded, so pleasure to meet you. Let's begin like this. Do you think there's any particular urgency for telcos to engage or accelerate their company transformation? There seems to be a lot of pressure on them to do it. Why the urgency?
So Martin, good to meet you as well. And I think the telcos are going through the biggest disruption in a generation. Let me make it real for you. I have 6 kids. Right, my kids are part of the digital generation. They expect everything. They expect it now. They expect connectivity to work across devices. If they don't work, they'll change operators. And if you ask my kids who provides their telecom services, they'll probably tell you Google or Apple. So the customer base is under attack. You look at competition, you've heard of the GAFA, the Googles and the Facebooks, the Apples. These companies are innovating, they're investing multi-billions of dollars, and they're able to do many things, including the basic services of a telco. So I think their core business is under core threat, and for me that requires a sense of urgency on the part of the telcos.
Okay, so that puts them in a position that they are in. Next question is, given the uncertainty in the market, given the changes, given the over-the-top players and everything else, what strategic options are available to the traditional telcos to be able to manage what's happening to them?
So let's start with the options they don't have.
Okay.
Right. For me, the number one thing that the telcos have got to get right is brilliant basics. In simple English, that means a network that works, that has broad coverage, that is fast and does what it says on the tin. If you've got that right, they have multiple options. You can go the way of British Telecom, buying content and sports rights, which can help you reposition your brand in the market. They can get into digital and be agents of change in other vertical industries, in the IoT market, which is going to explode over the next decades. But unless they get the fundamentals right, they will not be able to compete in these value-added areas.
Okay, so traditionally, telcos, the fixed lines, and even the older, now traditional mobile companies have very, very good core competency in various things, like 5 nines availability of dial tone and everything else. Do they need any more core capabilities? Do they need to address extra core capabilities to succeed under the kind of scenario you've just been talking about?
So I think even in the basic core capabilities in the network, they're going to have to embrace the software-defined network, the virtualization space. Beyond that though, I believe to go digital as a telco, you need to be digital yourself. What does that mean? You need to be a great digital marketeer. You need to be a great retailer. And ultimately you need to take on the greatest challenge of all, which is to have a digital DNA in your company. Embracing the latest technologies and having a workforce that thrives in the new digital economy. And I think that's going to be a massive challenge for the telcos.
Now, you are a Senior Managing Director at Accenture. Your work, your job is as a consultancy to telcos, amongst other things.
Yep.
When you see, and I don't want you to name names, no names, no pack drill, but if, bearing in mind what you know, when you're speaking to telcos and service providers and carriers like that, who may be reluctant to change for all sorts of political reasons internally and
Indeed.
economics and so on, or who maybe want to embrace it but don't know how to go about doing it, what sage advice do you give them to begin with?
Well, I think it's back to your first question, which is first addressing the fundamental burning platform. They have got to change, because if they don't change, their core business is going to be under systemic attack. Beyond that, to me, it's all about authentic leadership. It's about picking a few bets beyond the basics and making sure you're rallying your organization to the cause, whether that's around convergence, whether it's around selecting a few IoT areas where you want to lead, whether it's getting into vertical businesses like banks or others. I would advise them 2 things. 1, you got to be digital to go digital. And number 2, you got to choose your bets. And for those bets, you got to lead, and you got to require or get yourself the capabilities that are needed to be a leader in that space.
Do you find that your clients in the main who are coming from that side of the industry fully understand the challenge that faces them? I speak to people on a day-to-day basis about this. I speak to a lot of CEOs and so on. Some get it, some don't. Some are very reluctant to accept that they need to change because traditionally it's been quite easy not to.
Absolutely.
Obviously those days are ending. Do you find there is resistance to the concept of change even though they're asking you for advice?
I think resistance to change is natural in many of these companies. For sure, you get different reactions in different markets, but I would say in the main, CEOs are beginning to get the fact that change is necessary. I think they're all struggling a little bit on how they really rotate their businesses to the new, rotate their businesses to digital, rotate their businesses to customer centricity, and for sure we have a different level of different discussions depending on who you've got on the other side of the table.
Do you find there are geographical differences as well? Because you look at India at the moment, there's a company there which is adding 1 million subscribers a month, if not more, through an automated app. And it's just taking everything away from everywhere else, and its prices are 40% lower than anybody else's.
Right.
That's an extreme example, but do you find there are regional differences?
Oh, I find around the regions there are very extreme differences. I mean, India that you mentioned, given that the Indian consumer has been trained not to pay for basic services, you have to rotate to digital, you have to automate, you have to even move to things like artificial intelligence if you want to be relevant, and you surely need to understand how to monetize data. So I actually think there's a lot of lessons to be learned on this part of the world from some of the incredible innovation that is taking place around the rest of the world and demonstrating the art of the possible.
Final question to you then, Gary. If there's one thing that separates the winners from the losers in this new digital environment, the software, telco, whatever you want to call it, what do you think it is?
Martin, that's a great question. I would put it down to authentic leadership. I believe we're in a period of unparalleled disruption, and you've got to have leaders who are digital savvy, who've got conviction, who are not afraid to fail, but who are relentless in rotating their business for the good of their customers and for the good of the industry.
Okay, I said that was the last question, but I'm going to add a codicil to it. So, do you think that all leaders, as they are at the moment, are capable of doing that?
That's a controversial question for me as the leader of this industry. Honestly, I think you will see more digital gurus. I think you'll see more sales and marketing people leading these companies, and also people with global coverage, global experience, and global experience in particular of failing.
Very interesting and refreshingly different take on things. Somebody who's not afraid to say something, which makes a nice change for us, I must say, occasionally. Gary Heffernan, thanks very much indeed.
Martin, it's a pleasure.